Welcome back to another Full Build Friday. This week features a rebuild that you all voted on, though it's a bit simpler than most rebuilds, as we're simply transforming a playtest commander into a release commander. You can vote on the next rebuild over on the post, but before you go, let's take a look at the tyrannical tin tactician, Onslaught.
Onslaught. You need a bigger door!
Now, before we cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war, we should establish some build goals first, even if we've already done so once before. Onslaught is the leader of the Combaticons, a militant squad of Decepticons who can combine into the war machine, Bruticus. On his own, Onslaught is a brilliant strategist, who concocts plans and plots for his soldiers to carry out while he remains rather hands-off. However, when his carefully laid schemes go awry, he is prone to a rage that terrifies even his compatriots. As a transformer, he can change into a vehicular form, with a long bed truck featuring a missile trailer being his most frequent alt mode. When he's in robot mode, he's frequently featured with a sonic stun gun rifle or with a grenade launcher as seen in Earth Wars. In addition to these weapons, he doesn't hesitate to use traps, snares, and explosives to seize control of the battlefield. Finally, Onslaught's war-marked history often features some form of betrayal. In the original cartoon, he was being detained by the Decepticons for going renegade on even them, and he's also, in some comics, been a part of the Autobot Elite Guard that fell to his darker desires. In total, Onslaught is a terror on the battlefield as much for his strategies as he is for how he lashes out when those strategies go awry. He tends to favor heavier weapons that hit in an area, and will need a way to demonstrate his command of the combat. His ability to transform into a vehicle, and combine with his team into a super mode, will be rather difficult to represent, but I think I've got a few ideas that work in that vein. I do have to be honest, a lot of this build is going to look familiar to people that checked out the original, but there are still some changes to go through. For example, while Onslaught still uses the Automaton ancestry, he grabs the Mage heritage instead of the Sharpshooter heritage, which will provide him with the Analyze Target cantrip so that he can get the measure of a foe. He does admittedly go back to the usual with a reinforced chassis feat to make his metal body serve as protection. He then closes out on his ancestry with ability boost to Strength and Intelligence, though the former is simply part of being an automaton. We do change up his background a bit as he becomes a veteran, which I think better sells the copious combats he's campaigned in. This provides him with training in athletics and warfare lore, though the skill feat it provides is armor assist. He probably won't get a ton of use out of this given his reinforced chassis, but maybe it's something that he can at least help his allies with. He finalizes his background with ability boost to Constitution and Intelligence. As promised, we will obviously be using the Commander class, an intelligence-based martial class that is all about directing allies on the battlefield to seize victory. To do all of this, the Commander has a few core abilities to its class, a few tricks up its sleeve that allow it to seize control of the flow of battle. At the center of all of these are its Commander's Banner, Tactics, and Drilled Reflexes. It does also have Shield Block, but that won't be terribly important for this particular build. In the playtest, you started with 4 tactics and could prepare only 2, but in the full release, Onslaught starts with 5 tactics and can prepare 3 of them, which leads to him gaining Double Team, End It, Gather to Me, Reload, and Strike Hard, many of which do match his original build. Form Up seems to have been replaced by Gather to Me, which is likely the order called right before the Combaticons merge into Bruticus to go for the kill. He also adds End It to his repertoire, giving him a way to signal to his entire squad and also strike terror in the hearts of enemies. His class feat is still Deceptive Tactics since he's obviously a Decepticon.
They literally call themselves Decepticons. That doesn't set off any red flags?
Though aside from that, it's mostly because I don't think the other options quite fit him. Commanders are automatically trained in society and warfare lore, but Onslaught got the latter from his background, so he instead gains training in acrobatics, crafting, intimidation, medicine, stealth, survival, and thievery. For his ability scores, he's bumping up strength, dexterity, intelligence, and wisdom, with the intent of focusing on his intelligence and keeping up his class DC. Given his preferred weapons and the progression of the aforementioned class DC of the Commander, I would kit him out with a Stellar Cannon from Starfinder as his primary weapon. This hits in a burst per the weapons that he's known for, but it does limit him to using area fires rather than strikes, which did lead to some changes in his build. Interestingly, the commander has some similarities to casters where spells make a big difference in the build over feats, except in the case of the commander, it's their tactics that shine. As such, Onslaught might seem like a bit of a generalist build when it comes to feats, taking options such as Adaptive Stratagem to allow him to swap out his limited plans when he finds himself faced with certain enemies. On the other hand, Snare crafting as a skill feat will be most helpful if he has control of the battlefield beforehand and is based on his use of traps and the likes as part of his plots. At 3rd level, the commander acquires Warfare Expertise to become an expert in warfare lore and expand its use, while his actual skill increase makes him an expert in crafting, solely so that he can get more use out of snare crafting and the similar feats that he will end up taking. He also gains Toughness as his general feat. While ostensibly a hands-off sort of strategist, Onslaught doesn't shy away from the front lines, and is tough enough to give those under his command, such as Brawl, pause in challenging him. For the 4th level of our ferocious Ferris Felon, he features Tactical Expansion to gain both pincer attack and tactical takedown. We stick with a focus on getting as much of the squad involved as possible, and I like the single action nature of pincer attack so that he can use it alongside an area of fire. After all that, he still grabs alchemical crafting for similar reasons as to taking snare crafting, likely focusing on bombs and similar options so that he can effectively create mines for incoming enemies. 5th level begins with ability boost to Strength, Constitution, Intelligence, and Wisdom. It's followed by Military Expertise, which enhances his weapons, whereas this level skill increase makes him an expert in Intimidation. He still uses Arcane Eye as his ancestry feat, granting Onslaught some nods, so that he can take part and likely lead Night Ops. Through efficient preparation at 6th level, Onslaught gains the ability to prepare Fork Tactics, which is a simple but highly useful effect. He also grabs Intimidating Glare as a skill feat, and with this I want to mention that it's always prudent to demoralize as the first action of your turn, and then follow up with any strikes, area fires, or other effects that you want to inflict. 7th level sees this sinister steel-shrouded strategist seize Expert Tactician and Weapon Specialization. The former is a nice boost with Class DC, new tactics, and more prepared tactics. It also makes him a master in warfare lore, whereas his skill increase makes him a master in Intimidation. As for his tactics from this level up, I like Demoralizing Charge for the rather daunting Combaticons charging in a battle, but Alley-Oop might be even more fun and representative of Onslaught knowing his squad, particularly the ever-equipped Swindle.
Now, let's see about getting you rearmed. It's been stellar cycles, but I never forget a weapon.
Beyond that, he takes incredible initiative because this war machine is constantly hankering for his next battle, with an eagerness to see his plans fall into place. Expanding on our own plans, 8th level features Defiant Banner, which feels appropriate for Decepticons who are often founded on principles of rebellion, and there's been times where Onslaught has even defied them. Then, in a rather apropos move for a character using a class from the Battlecry book, Onslaught takes the Battlecry skill feat so that he can terrify his foes and weaken them before the battle barely begins. 9th level is pretty simple for commanders, only featuring Fortitude Expertise and a skill increase that makes Onslaught a master in crafting. For his ancestry feat, he uses Core Attunement, which grants him a pair of spells, and this might seem like an odd choice. However, through it, Onslaught acquires Fleet Step, so that he can transform into a faster mode. Get it? Right? It works? And then grabs Kalgazerke's Axes, which simply buffs our Murdering Militant Mecha or one of his squad mates. Getting into 10th level, he takes ability boost to Strength, Constitution, Intelligence, and Charisma. This time around, that intelligence boost makes him train in Diplomacy, and then he takes Drilled Reflexes for his class feat, allowing him to make sure that his teammates have the reactions needed to make his brilliant plans come to fruition. Speaking of, he also takes the Battle Planner skill feat, letting him draw up a plan before the battle commences, while also taking advantage of his automatically scaling warfare lore. I somehow didn't take this in my original build, which I can only assume was due to gross negligence on my part, for which I apologize. Following on from there, 11th level comes with Armor Expertise, Commanding Will, and a skill increase that makes him an expert in Athletics. Fitting this physicality, he also takes Pick Up the Pace as his general feat, so that he can get his group marching, or have them
Transform and roll out.
We have a repeat feat at 12th level with Tactical Expansion, providing Onslaught with Buckle Cut Blitz and Take the High Ground. If the clumsy condition of the former lasted longer, it could be handy for his area fires, but the latter is at least based on the commonality of flight amongst the Decepticon forces, particularly Blastoff and Vortex from the Combaticons. While they are busy gaining aerial superiority, Onslaught can use Terrified Retreat to send the foes running for the hills, turning them into sitting ducks for his airbound allies. As I've noted, the Commander is a martial class that does have some caster sensibilities in its design. Despite that aspect, it still becomes a master with its weapons at lucky level 13, as well as a master in perception and athletics through a skill increase. Now Onslaught is usually depicted as rather large, so he'll use the enlarged chassis Ancestry feat to turn this techno-tyrant into a towering titanium tactician that trounces troublemakers. From there, 14th level features contact with the enemy, which allows him to swap out more potent tactics, and then he swaps in tech crafting for similar reasons as the much earlier alchemical and snare crafting, with the main intent being that Onslaught can make the likes of grenades and similar explosives. While that last level is pretty simple and straightforward, level 15 starts with ability boost to Strength, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. He also gains Battlefield Intuition, Greater Weapon Specialization, and Master Tactician, which means that he'll become a Legend in Warfare lore, and then Intimidation as well. With Onslaught achieving Master Tactician, he gains Ready Aim Fire and Roaring Charge, both of which let him bring multiple squad mates online to either rain down fire on a foe, or move forward in a terrifying blitz. Following that, Fleet as his general feat might seem a bit minor, and it honestly is, but it is inspired by his vehicular alt mode and the speed that grants. Speaking of speed, 16th level sees this scheming cybernetic strategist slip Quickening Banner into his class feats, allowing him to briefly grant the Quicken condition to his Combaticons. Naturally, with the increase to Intimidation from last level, he then takes Scared to Death as his skill feat, and I want to point out, I think I've resisted the urge to take this feat for a good while, which deserves at least a little bit of self-congratulations, if nobody else is going to do it. As for level 17, Onslaught gains Armor Mastery, and then a skill increase that makes him a Legend in Athletics. For his final Ancestry feat, he takes Greater Augmentation for his enlarged chassis, so that he's not clumsy from his increased size anymore. With the incoming level 18, Onslaught gains Demand Surrender, though I think you could also take Practice Reflexes. I do personally prefer Demand Surrender here, with the idea that Onslaught takes advantage of the compassion and softness of the foolish Autobots. Then, since we do have a professional soldier on our hands, he absolutely has to take Legendary Professional, which ensures that he can make the most of his warfare lore, and can find work as a mercenary even when he's on the outs from the Decepticons. The only class feature at level 19 is Legendary Tactician, though this is a pretty hardy one. It gets us the Legendary Proficiency in his Commander class DC, more tactics that he can prepare, and then 2 Legendary tactics on top of it. From these, he'll gain Cry Havoc to unleash the Combaticons on his foes, and Instant Ballista, so that he can have them all form up to unleash a devastating attack. Almost like they're combining into Bruticus, or are a bunch of Power Rangers. Aside from that, he becomes a Legend in Crafting, and then expands on Pick of the Pace with Caravan Leader. Except this caravan is going to be a bunch of military vehicles busting through the streets. We come to a close at level 20 with ability boost to Strength, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. With his final boost to Intelligence, he'll go ahead and finally become trained in Deception. I still like Pennant of Victory as his capstone class feat here, giving him a way to boost the speed of his allies and grant them an insane +4 on their attack rolls, alongside some other benefits. For his skill feat, we'll end it on Terrifying Resistance, allowing him to become even harder to take down after he demoralizes and brutalizes his adversaries. This suits his up-armored military alt mode quite well, and is a fine feat to finish off the build with. When it comes to playing Onslaught, your turns will look different depending on whether you want to take the offensive, or you want your allies to do so, and this is the big choice. His use of weapons such as a grenade launcher or stellar cannon means that his attacks take 2 actions, so we'll want to combine those with alternative actions or single action tactics, such as take the high ground, alley-oop, pincer attack, and some of the other more basic options. We'll likely have to forego attacking in the rounds that he wants to use his 2-action tactics, but could otherwise demoralize, reposition, prep a grenade, or even use his banner abilities such as Defiant or Quickening Banner before sending his allies into the thick of it. When it comes to using tactics, the main thing you'll have to be mindful of is picking the right ally to use the right strategy with. similar to how Onslaught himself has to think ahead for his plans. Now, if you were to bring this build into a free Archetype game, Starfinder 2nd Edition actually offers us the Soldier Dedication, so that Onslaught can get more use out of his area fire weapons and pick some action efficiency stuff, such as Shot on the Run. Collateral Witness also isn't bad given his intimidation investment, and something like Run Hot might just be fun. Other than that, the Martial archetype is an obvious fit, and he could get some particular use out of the Dread Martial stance to increase the damage of his teammates, and better befit the brutal style of Decepticon command. With all that said though, we've got our marching orders. However, before we ship out, let's go ahead and review the SOP. Onslaught is a mage automaton commander with a veteran background, which is based on his storied service record, whether that be as a member of the Elite Guard, or simply a high-ranking officer of the Decepticon forces. And as part of those forces, he does make use of the Deceptive Tactics feat, as well as tactics and skills alike that allow him to terrify foes upon the battlefield. He expresses his strategic genius through the Battle Planner feat, and adjusts the commander class, allowing him to organize friends and foes into the plans that he carefully concocts. I sought to focus on tactics that commanded multiple allies at once, so that he can bring the full force of the Combaticons to bear, and I even took some tactic space on his teammates, such as Swindle and Alley-Oop. When it comes to representing his alt mode, I used his Mage Heritage and Core Attunement to pick up Fleet Step, allowing him to adopt a much faster form, though a good bit of that will be flavor. I tap into Starfinder weaponry for him, using the likes of a Stellar Cannon and a Grenade Launcher, the area fires of which will work nicely with the Class DC of the Commander. He also makes use of Snare, Alchemical, and Tech Crafting, so that he can control the battlefield with traps and explosives, though he'll need time to actually assemble them first. He uses the likes of Gather To Me and Instant Ballista to call his team together and form up for a powerful attack, referencing his ability to combine with the Combaticons into Bruticus, and otherwise focuses on aggressive tactics such as Strike Hard, Pincer Attack, and Ready, Aim, Fire. This chrome-coated captain captures command of the Combaticons and conflicts alike with cunning contrivances and copious concussions, combusting the combat zone into a calculated conflagration. The voting for the next build is live over on my post, so be sure to check that out. Other than that, let me know what you think of this build and what other sorts of builds you'd like to see in a comment. If you like what you see here and want more, be sure to leave a like and then subscribe to the channel. You can also check out the blog, which is linked below along with the Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic Friday.
Here's one metamorph, They all combine and keep comparing.